And good evening once again, everybody. Welcome to Hoops HD's Bracketology.
Bracket.
Bracketology?
Bracket. No, bracket projections.
Bracket,
Bracket
bracket
projections.
projections.
Bracket
Bracket projections show.
projections.
David, your favorite word, bracketology, correct?
Yeah, because there's a scientific study to do, to figure out what 10 people, all who are different with different ideas, are going to do exactly. I hate bracketology, but I
Uh,
love brackets.
Welcome to our Bracket Rundown show. I'm your host, Chad Sherwood. This is our Thursday evening show. As you already know, the NCAA puppet master there himself, David Griggs, is joining us. Also, John Stalika on with us tonight. John, how are you doing?
Doing quite well, Chad and David. We're only 12 shopping days away from the month of March.
Month of March and the start of conference tournaments. March 1st, the Patriot League and I believe the Atlantic Sun will be kicking off, and starting to get a little excited there, David, aren't you?
Oh yeah. I've been excited since November, but I'm really getting excited now.
Well, this is our bracket rundown show where we have a couple different formats. Tonight, the format that we've done is I've asked various members of our Hoops HD staff to submit to me a seed list, a proposed seed list, which we've then created a consensus seed list out of and went ahead and bracketed it. And what we're going to be doing on the air tonight is actually revealing that bracket, showing the teams, showing the matchups, showing where they're going, showing everything. But David, even though we're recording this Thursday evening, this is as of the end of games Wednesday.
Yes, so Thursday's games really weren't considered. Right now, it's going on about 10:30 at night. Cincinnati's playing Tulsa. Up until now, even though Maryland lost, that would ding them a little bit. That's the only game that's been played tonight that would have made me change anything. Can we make something else, Chad? I wanted to show you before we got started here.
You just chased Chad away because of the Maryland loss.
Yeah, well, screw him. Anyway, what do you think about this? They've met 252 times. It's one of the best rivalries, the border war, Kansas, Missouri, and they no longer play. It's just ridiculous.
Oh, I thought you were going to talk about Xavier and Dayton, but
Xavier and Dayton should play
between
too.
the two.
Yeah, but anyway, so but we really need to get Kansas and Missouri. Chad's back.
There we go. What a start to the show tonight. We had a little technical difficulties, but
you were just upset that Maryland lost, weren't you?
I was upset that, and especially upset that we were not going to be considering that Maryland loss in the bracket that we're going to be revealing. Although I think, as we discussed before we went on the air, we'd probably see them down a seed line because of that loss.
Probably so. Here's something else. If you can see on my screen here, this is the 2015-16 NCAA Tournament Selection Committee. I show you this to say, Chad, how concerned are we with this?
No. With the bracket?
No, with the committee.
With the committee?
How much do we care about them?
Why would we care about the committee?
Yeah, we don't care at all.
All they do is follow our guidelines, but we're the real committee, correct?
Right. No attempt here. This is the bracket as we think it should look like. There's no attempt here to guess the actual committee. Just
correct.
Yes.
Yeah, there are a lot of bracketologists out there who I use the evil word again, bracketologists who are trying to study and guess what the committee does. Our colleague John Deitel does that for us, in fact, on our shows, but that's not what we're doing here.
Right.
And if you could see now on my screen, we should have a tournament bracket showing up.
Yeah, it's blank.
Well, it's blank because we're going to start revealing the teams, and
it's better than a picture of the Atlantic City barrister.
Yeah. Well, we have no idea. We're seeing this for the first time.
Yeah, the only person who knows the results is me, and I took a look at them very briefly as I bracketed it up. But just before we go any further, were 5 people that submitted brackets. The 3 of us, or seed list, the 3 of us, as well as our colleague Lee Del Vecchio, who is not with us tonight, and our colleague Warren Nolan has also submitted. He has not been able to make it on a show yet tonight. Wasn't able to tonight or this season. We hope to have him next week for a couple of shows, but his input was given into these considerations here as well.
Right. So if you're still watching after that awful beginning, let's get to it.
Let's get to it. 1 seeds. Number 1 overall, Kansas. Number 2, Villanova. Number 3, Virginia. And number 4, Oklahoma. David, your thoughts on the 1 line?
I mean, I agree with Kansas as the number one overall. I agree with Oklahoma being up there. I like the way Virginia's playing. I think those are the four ones that I had. I didn't have them in the exact order. I still had Oklahoma as number three overall. I know Virginia's coming off of a loss. I realize the committee will not take this into consideration, at least not officially, but I think that, like, I don't think you can ding Virginia for that loss at all, especially since it ended the way they did. And Virginia's playing so well right now. Even this is a checkpoint. It isn't really a predictor of the future. This is as if today were Selection Sunday. By Selection Sunday, I think Virginia will be up on the one line, and perhaps even, I mean, they might win out. They're playing so well.
John, the one team noticeably absent from here is a team that you and I both thought belonged on the one line. I think you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, we're not talking about Iowa here, but I think the one thing that Xavier is lacking that the other four teams have on this line are wins against the top four seed line quality teams. And with Xavier, the closest thing they would have is Dayton, but that's not going to be enough to match teams like Kansas, Virginia, or even Villanova for that matter.
I'll tell you, it was very, very close. It was actually worth three of us. John, you and I, along with Warren Nolan, all thought that Xavier did belong on the one line. A couple people, such as David, thought they belonged a little bit lower down the two line, which is one of the reasons why, I'm sorry, Xavier belonged on that line. Xavier did fall down here.
I had them on the two.
You had them on the two, but you didn't have them as number 5. You had them number 6, and that's how close it was. Very thin margin between Oklahoma and Xavier for the last one seed here. We're going to go ahead right on ahead, though, and reveal the two line. Obviously, Xavier is on it. They were the number 5 overall team. Joining them, West Virginia, Iowa, and Michigan State. John, West Virginia up here on the 2 line. I think you agreed with that, correct?
I did. I had West Virginia number 8 overall, but that's also because I like their profile a little bit more than, let's say, teams like North Carolina, Miami, Maryland, and Oregon going into tonight. The sweep against Texas isn't going to hurt the Mountaineers too much as long as they continue to take care of their business in the conference.
Yeah, and I mean, Iowa, I've had Iowa on the one line for months and months. Losing at Penn State kind of resulted in me moving them down, and I realized that it's just one part of their profile. Like, they're not going to. I mean, it's just 1/30th of their season, really. But when you look at the other one seeds, nobody else has the stuff on their profile that Iowa has, minus maybe Virginia. I know they have a couple, like they lost to Virginia Tech and they lost to somebody else, but I still don't think those teams are as bad as Penn State. And Iowa just, I know that the committee says they don't use the eye test, at least not exclusively, but they just haven't looked that good this past couple weeks. I mean, they still look good, but they've had to sweat out games that you would expect them to blow through.
Let me throw one other thing out here. We do have Michigan State over there in the West region on the one line, on the 2 line here as well. Indiana, Iowa, Maryland, Wisconsin, Purdue, Michigan, and even Ohio State are currently above them in the standings of the Big Ten. Very strange almost to see the team that's in 8th place in a conference also being among the top 8 teams in the country.
Yeah, if you gave Michigan State Ohio State's conference schedule in the Big Ten, I'm sure they'd be able to pretty much rack up a bloated record at the Big Ten bakery.
Well, you also got to factor in a 13-0 non-conference schedule for Michigan State that no one else in the Big Ten has. That's holding them up right now, but they have not been nearly as good in Big Ten play.
They haven't been, but they're still 8-5. I mean, they're not. If they don't play their way above 8th place, they're probably not going to be on the 2 line, but I think they will.
Right. I mean, they are 8-5. 3 of those teams are 9-5. They're only half a game behind them. A couple wins here, and they're going to be at least up into 3rd or 4th place. And
because of the number of teams in the Big Ten, it's a more unbalanced schedule than, let's say, the Pac-12 or Mountain West would be.
And let's also look at Michigan State's remaining schedule. Wisconsin at home, followed by at Ohio State, Penn State home, at Rutgers, Ohio State home. They probably should win out here.
Right.
and if they belong on the 2 line, they will win out.
Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and reveal the 3 line as well now. This is where we did have the Maryland Terrapins coming in. They probably, after the loss tonight, don't belong here anymore, along with Miami, North Carolina, and the Oregon Ducks. David, anything surprise you here?
Nothing surprises me. This is where I had Maryland before the loss, squarely on the 3 line. It's honestly where I had them before they lost at home to Whiskey over the weekend. The reason I don't think Maryland is 1 or 2 seed material, and the reason I didn't think so even when they were ranked second, is because they haven't really shown they can beat good teams, or in the case of tonight, bad teams away from home. I'm not as big on them. I'd probably have them at least a line lower if we were to redo this after the night's game. But North Carolina, again, coming off the loss to Duke, do we have time for just some quick trivia real quick? Duke and North Carolina, they're 8 miles apart, and they've never met in the NCAA tournament. So that I just thought that was interesting.
I'll tell you what, it was a pair of our colleagues, Warren Nolan and Lee Del Vecchio, that both helped North Carolina get up to the 3 line, as they both of them actually thought that the Tar Heels were a 2-seed caliber.
I don't see based on what, and this is why I wish Lee and Warren would have been here. It's like what have they done that indicates they're a 2 or a 3? They haven't done anything that a 4 or a 5 seed couldn't do. They've won at Syracuse. That's really it.
Well, John, you had them on the 3 line, so why don't you respond?
Yeah, I had North Carolina as my number 10 overall because they do have, 5 wins against the field, including the win against Maryland, who would be in the top 4. Their best win away from home is going to be at Syracuse, but depending on how Florida State does, that field may shrink to just 4 teams that they have wins against the field.
Yeah.
What I want to do now is go ahead and reveal the 4 line, and this will complete our protected seeds, which are the top 16 teams. These teams will, among other things, are not supposed to be placed at a home court disadvantage in the first round. They also are the presumptive Sweet 16 teams. On the 4 line, we have a couple blue bloods here, Kentucky and Duke, along with Texas and Iowa State. And I want to start with Duke because I quite honestly,
a bracketing rule.
I know I sent them to Oklahoma City and not to Raleigh, and I apologize.
That is a bracket. I thought your software was supposed to catch that.
But the Duke Blue Devils, I had them on the 3 line. I had them highest rated for anybody in our group here. That's how big I think this win was yesterday, and how well I think this team is playing right now. They are sitting here with a 13 RPI, but right now they now have 4 wins against the top 50, but 3 of those are top 25 wins, including at North Carolina. They also have another pile of 8 other wins against the top 100, including Georgetown, VCU, at NC State, at Georgia Tech. Not tournament teams, but these are still solid wins, and no bad losses. At Clemson, they're only thing close to a bad loss, and Clemson's a team that we're going to actually probably mention at some point tonight, at least.
Right. I didn't have them as high as you did. I believe I had them right on the 4 line, but you said it. The way they're playing now, when you look at what they have left on their schedule, they could end up as a 3 or even higher. One of the ones you didn't mention, I think they should get some credit for the neutral floor win at VCU. Georgia Tech, nowhere near the field, maybe not even an NIT team, but Georgia Tech's been good at home this year. So I think Duke deserves some credit for going in there and winning that, even though they're not a tournament team. I like Duke. I don't like them as much as you. One of the teams that I like more than the rest of you by far is Texas. I mean, I just think they won at West Virginia. I think that's incredible. They won at Baylor. Really good. I mean, 2 really good wins. Their losses, I know they have a lot of losses, but listen to this. Kansas, Oklahoma, Iowa State. Like 3, those teams, have a combined total of 3 losses at home? Yeah, I don't think you can ding them for any of those. And, they had the win at Texas Tech. They have the win at Stanford. I just really like this Texas
Do you
team.
want to talk about the loss at TCU, though, David?
Well, I mean, if you're just going to focus on that.
And the loss to Michigan and the loss to Washington.
Michigan's a tournament team.
These are teams. Michigan and Washington are teams that are going to be in dark uniforms if they even made this field. TCU is a team that's not going to be in this field. But John, let me turn over to you. Kentucky also making this line here. Your thoughts on the Wildcats and how well they've been playing right now?
Yeah, Kentucky has definitely been playing very well, especially when you consider the South Carolina win and also the Tennessee win earlier tonight. A team that I actually valued more than Duke would actually be Notre Dame, because both the Blue Devils and the Irish have 5 wins against teams that would be in the field, but Notre Dame also has 3 wins against protected seeds right now in Iowa, Duke, and North Carolina. 2 of those were away from home, which is not something you would expect to see on the Notre Dame profile.
It was actually very close. Kentucky was our last 16 seed. The top of the 5 line was actually a 2-way tie for the next spot when we scored this. And Notre Dame was one of those 2 teams. But before we go to reveal the 5 line, David, is there anybody else that we did not get in the Sweet 16 that you really think should have been there?
Well, I had, and again, a lot of this, we look at it a little differently than the committee will. I am perhaps projecting how I expect this team to finish. I had Nebraska way up here with Coach Tim Miles. I mean, I just think that he's going to destroy the non-believers, and Nebraska is going to end up here. In all seriousness, I did have Notre Dame as a protected seed. I mean, I was kind of surprised when I did it, but when you look at them, the top of their profile is outstanding. The win at Duke, the win away from home against Iowa, home win against North Carolina, although North Carolina can't seem to beat anybody good away from home. But, you know, I know that they have a lot of losses, but again, at Virginia, at Miami, at Syracuse, these aren't really losses you can ding them too badly for.
I think Nebraska should be thankful for the Vegas 16 this year if they're looking for any postseason.
You can't say that about him. He's going to destroy the. He's going to.
We just went Vegas 16, so it's time to reveal the 5 line, I think. But I'll tell you, the other team that I think is towing the Sweet 16 right now is Arizona. They were the team that tied with in their rankings with Notre Dame. I think there's another team that's really bounced back and played really well, having won 6 straight games. Coming up this weekend at Colorado and at Utah, or games next week, Colorado and Utah. But Arizona right there. The other 2 teams joining Arizona and Notre Dame are Dayton and Purdue.
I like this Dayton team. I realize that they're coming off of a loss to St. Joe's, but St. Joe's, that's not an easy game to win. Granted, if you're a protected seed, you're expected to be able to win games like that. But they were without, I think, was it Pollard that didn't play? They were without a key player. They were on the road. St. Joe's played really well. I'm not concerned about – I still think Dayton's a good team. I know they're high in the rankings, but national media has been real quiet about them. You don't hear about them as much. And getting back to that, does that have something to do with the A-10's ridiculously poor TV deal exposure? I mean, you just don't hear about them, even though they're good.
Now, one brackety note I want to take care of here would be Duke and Notre Dame. They would be able to meet in the second round as long as they don't play each other in the ACC conference tournament. But if they do meet in Washington, then this matchup would have to be shifted around.
Correct. And when I bracket these, I'm not assuming any type of conference tournament matchup. So right now, Duke and Notre Dame, having only met once in the being scheduled to meet once in the regular season, could meet, and that is a valid matchup, as John said. Dayton. I guess going back to Dayton, I did kind of penalize them a bit here. They have to go out to Spokane. That's a rough road trip for them. But Purdue, the other 4 or 5 seed here as well.
What do you think of Purdue? I mean, I think they have a lot of decent but no great wins, and I agree with our staff. I think this is about where they belong.
Travels well, so I think the folks in Spokane will be grateful for that if it comes to fruition.
When is people in Spokane grateful for anything?
I agree with you, though, going back to Purdue, that I think this is right where they belong. I know some people in the media have them ranked higher, other people have them ranked lower. In terms of our group, as I try to get my notes up here about Purdue. We all had them fairly even, other than Lee Del Vecchio, who liked them a lot better than the rest of us, but Lee is insane most of the time. So
Well, Lee doesn't differentiate between home and away. I wish Lee was here so I could tell him how stupid he is over and over again.
let's go on to the sixth line here.
Stupid bear.
Sixth line, Utah, Baylor, USC, and the Indiana Hoosiers coming in here on the sixth line. John, let me start with you.
He's so mad when he watches this, and I'm so sad that I won't be there to see it.
John, let me start with you. Anything shock you, or one way or the other being here or being not here on the sixth line?
I'd wonder about a team like Baylor because they're not going to be able to play Iowa State again until the Big 12 tournament. That's been the only team of note they've been able to beat, although they do have a season sweep of the Cyclones under their pockets. Although their win at Texas Tech is starting to look better now.
Looking a lot better now, honestly. This is one of those situations where a team wins a game that we didn't really give them much credit for, and then when you look at the profile again 3 weeks later, hey, that is a pretty good win. We just didn't think about it that way 3 weeks ago.
Out of this group, I like Baylor the most. I mean, I realize that they just got blitzed by Texas Tech, but I still think they're a good team. These other teams, you're starting to get into sort of home court heroes. Indiana, lots of wins, but nothing too spectacular on the road, although they did win convincingly at Michigan. SC, having a big year, great year for Andy Enfield and the job he's done there, but they struggle away from home. And, Utah, I think they just have the 3 road wins there. So, but this is normal. I mean, when you get to the sixth line, you get teams that struggle away from home and typically have to play someone in the round of 32. If they get out of the round of 64, that's a lot better on the road than they are. So,
well, let me go back to that Utah team. Yeah, they only have a few road wins, but they've got some neutral court wins that are really looking pretty nice. Temple, Duke, and Texas Tech all on neutral courts, and those three. This is another Utah profile that is looking better due to the teams they've beaten are getting better and better as we go further into the season, and that's why I like this Utah profile. And I think if they can keep winning games, they're at UCLA tonight, but if they can keep winning games, I think they could. I don't know if they can get to the 4 line, but I think they could be a solid 5 seed at the end of the day.
And I think Utah is also going to get a lot of credit for being the only team to win at Colorado so far this year.
And that is a good one. And that's a real good win. Actually, they didn't win.
They have 12 top 100 wins, 6 top 50 wins, only 1 loss outside the top 50. That was at Stanford, although they also lost at Wichita State, which is right at number 50, so I guess I've got to mention that briefly. Mm-hmm. Let's go ahead and reveal the 7 line, though, and on this line we've got Syracuse, Providence, Texas A&M, and Colorado. Josh, David, let me start with you this time. Anything here that stands out to you?
Well, I don't know about stands out, but let's talk about Providence, shall we?
Yeah.
Let's talk about Providence.
I'll tell you, there was about a 10-point difference from best to worst in the voting on them.
Well, only 10, because, again, Providence is the top of Providence profile is amazing, and the bottom of it is amazing. It's just amazing their range, that you can win at Villanova and lose to DePaul. What do you do with a team like that? I had them higher than this because I guess I just thought their top of the profile warranted it, but you could make a case, and I'm sure some of us did. I'm surprised that we were all as close as we were with them, that they shouldn't even be here. They did not look good last night. Granted, they were playing at Xavier, but Xavier just kind of ran them over.
Yeah, I was one of the ones that had them lower than most of the rest of us, and it really was because I saw what was on the bottom of the profile there. I'm looking at a team here in the Friars that has now lost 4 out of 5, 5 out of 7. It's just I'm very, very hesitant about this team. While they got the Arizona and the Villanova wins, which are pretty damn good, they really better do something here these last 4 regular season games.
DePaul and St. John's are going to be absolute must-wins for the Friars. But
as is Creighton at home. Creighton at home is going to be a must-win. I mean, and they all might be must-wins. So
and they also have to go to Seton Hall, which is going to be pretty tricky too.
Yeah, another team, Syracuse. I don't think I had them close to here. I don't think I had them quite this high. And again, the bottom of their profile has a loss to St. John's on it. I think St. John's has lost like 19 of their last 23. In that stretch, that includes losses to Incarnate Word by about 22 points. And didn't was it? It was a Metro Atlantic school who beat them. It was somebody awful. I forget. But yeah, I don't know. Syracuse, and they didn't really particularly look that good the other night either. I don't know what to make of them, but there's things on the top of their profile that are pretty good. So.
Do former teams from the Metro Atlantic count for St. John's? Because I was going to say Fordham in that regard.
They lost to Fordham. They lost to NJIT. Yeah, they didn't lose to any current Metro Atlantic.
Okay, maybe it was somebody awful beat them. I mean, really, really bad. But it wasn't. Okay, I'm imagining.
You may be thinking of their exhibition loss to a non-D1 team.
Yeah, St. Thomas Aquinas, but no, I mean those don't count.
But John, is there anything? How about this Texas A&M team? Any thoughts on them coming in here on the 7 line?
I mean, honestly, I probably would have had Texas A&M a little bit higher because of some of their body of work from December and January. But Colorado is a team that really jumps out in front of me because Oregon is the only surefire NCAA team they've beaten. But Oregon State and Cal's, that'll still hold some weight for the Buffaloes. But their best road win would be either Colorado State or Stanford. So that's something that's going to have to improve if they want to stay at the 7 line.
Another thing about A&M, this is a team that Chad thought was a 1 seed. I just want to point this out.
David, how about Colorado? Because you're big on the road wins, and as John correctly points out, their best road win was at Stanford. They have been Oregon State, and Cal all at home. No really bad losses, though.
No, it's no bad losses. They haven't been that good on the road. What it comes down to with Colorado is, I guess I just like them better than we're getting to a point to where there just isn't the good on people's profiles is less and less and less. And it wasn't so much I liked them more as that it's that I didn't like them less.
You actually had them 1 line lower on the 8 line anyhow, but
yeah.
you had them higher than John, who had them, I think, on the 10 line. So
okay,
Did you say that David was high on Colorado?
I love it. I mean,
we're going to show the 8 line here. This is Pittsburgh, Texas Tech, Florida, and California. And the huge one there, let's start with it. Texas Tech, not only in the field, but on the 8 line and wearing white after what they've done the last 3 games.
Yeah, I've been big on Texas Tech all year long. I mean, I've been trying to tell you that they're good. I've been huge on them. Yeah, well, yeah, you said it. I mean, when you go out there and you win at Baylor by 18 and you beat Oklahoma, and I know they beat Oklahoma at home, but Oklahoma has been outstanding on the road this year, so they deserve a lot of credit for that, even if they were at home. I mean, when you do that, and I didn't have a win against Iowa State as well, that changes the complexion of your profile just a bit. I mean, that's 3 really good wins as opposed to 0, which has really shot them up. And they also have a win against Texas. So one of these teams, well, I guess we'll get to it.
Go ahead. Let's talk. You want to talk about Cal, don't you?
Yes.
Okay,
well, Cal,
because there's something I want to talk about also this slide that I don't agree with. And it's not Cal, but Dave, let's start with Cal and let you, John, discuss this Cal team because in terms of where you both had this team ranked, I can just let you know here. Actually, you both didn't think they belonged this high at all. It was myself, Warren, and Lee Delvecchio that pushed this Cal team up this high.
Okay, Cal has a home win over Oregon, and they did blitz them. I mean, they blew them out pretty good, and they deserve some credit for that. But the rest of it, Utah, only 3 true road wins. How good of a win is that really? Arizona, not at full strength when they did it. Home against Colorado. We just got done talking about how Colorado has struggled on the road. Oregon State's been horrible on the road. Where are the wins here? I mean,
but David, what we have here is we've got 5 top 50 wins against teams that, other than Oregon State, we've already put in the field above them. Yeah, now, I know they're all at home, and I know they've got to do something. They're at Washington tonight. They're at Washington State this weekend. They need just quantity of road wins, not even quality of road wins, but quantity of road wins on this profile. And I agree with you. If they lose their last 4 road games, I don't know that they make the field. But right now, with those home wins, which is better than some of the garbage I'm seeing below them, I think Cal is an 8 seed with the ability to drop right out of the field.
Even if they just beat Washington State and Arizona State on the road, that's still going to be an improvement.
Oh, it
and,
would be.
and that's what I want to see out of Cal. I'm almost assuming at this point that they're going to win those 2 games. I hate to assume a future game, but I just like what they've done at home so much that I think they should be solidly in the 8-9 seed range. And
what about Pittsburgh?
And okay, let's talk Pittsburgh because it's the other team I want to actually get to.
You've already established that you all are all wrong about Cal. So let's look at Pittsburgh.
Okay, so David, you want to start us off about Pittsburgh?
Well, I mean, the top of their profile, there's something really good there. There's the win at Notre Dame. Oh, would you like me to continue?
Well, John, you had Pitt at number 25 overall on your seed list, so let me let you respond and tell them why you like Pitt that high.
Well, number one, I like the fact that they have 4 wins against teams in the field, and also I think they were the only team that's won at Notre Dame this year. I mean, Pitt does have 7 losses, but their worst loss would be at home against NC State, which not great, but that's still not as an atrocious as losses we're going to see as we go down the seed line here. So, I mean, I know we are not looking too highly on them after needing a couple overtimes to beat Wake Forest, but survive and advance.
Something. Well, I guess it just wasn't.
Okay, well, you know what? I think it's my turn here to talk about a team, and the 4th team we haven't discussed in this line, and that's the Florida Gators. And David, this argument's for you. They've beaten West Virginia at home, and then.
Yeah, I mean, I what they have, I guess, is just a collection of decent wins, but no really good ones.
Decent wins. Georgia, LSU, Ole Miss, those aren't decent wins. Those are below decent wins. Even St. Joe's win, I guess, is okay because St. Joe's was on the verge of dropping out of the field until they picked up the win against Dayton the other night.
That was still on a neutral floor.
It was on a neutral floor. It wasn't a home win, so it was a little bit better because it was neutral. They have a loss at Tennessee, and Tennessee is awful. They have a loss at Vanderbilt. Awful. Vanderbilt is awful.
Vanderbilt is awful.
I just don't. I mean, they have an overinflated RPI of 31, but I don't understand that RPI really because I do not see it here with this Florida team. I would have had them in my first 4. I would have had them in the field, but going to Dayton.
I guess it helped Florida to play teams like Gulf Coast and Jacksonville to help pad their record a little bit. Vermont and Navy aren't too bad either by under the radar standards.
Yeah, Florida's got a little more work to do.
Let's go to the 9 line. We can actually start seeing some matchups here. St. Joe's, Monmouth, Seton Hall, and South Carolina coming in here at the 9 line. Texas Tech, Monmouth, an interesting game there, I think, as is Pitt, St. Joe's. But
Monmouth and St. Joe's need to be flip-flopped.
Monmouth and St. Joe's need to be flip-flopped. Okay. I'll just have a potential St. Joe's Villanova game.
Yeah, that would be a fun one. Chad's no fun with his bracket.
But John, is there somebody here that surprises you, doesn't or not?
Well, I guess based on their loss earlier in the week, it was seeing South Carolina this low. But I mean, there's going to have to be some penalty for losing to a team like Missouri, especially after they got a black eye, in the words of angry Frank Martin against Kentucky.
Yeah, this was a big fall for South Carolina, David.
Yeah, it was, but I think it's. I mean, they lost at Mizzou. They do have the nice win at Texas Tech, or I'm sorry, at Texas A&M, your former 1 seed. But they don't really. I think this is about where they belong. I want to say that this line kind of surprised me. I think that there's some things on this line that most of the consensus outside of us does not agree with. I don't think most people think Monmouth belong up here. I don't know if the real committee will put Monmouth here, but I agree that they belong here. When you look at what they've done, when you look at just the sheer quantity of wins away from home, and then when you look at the top of their profile, how good it is. I like Seton Hall. I don't understand why people is down on Seton Hall as they are. I mean, I think this is where Seton Hall belongs. Most people think
I
that.
think Seton Hall belonged a little bit lower, honestly. And again, it's they won at Providence, and then what else? A home win over Wichita State, who has not shown up yet, and wins over a bunch of teams that are not going to show up tonight, and losses to Butler, well, not Butler, to Creighton and to Long Beach State.
Well, they did win at Creighton to make up for that a little bit.
You got
This is not soccer where we use aggregate scoring.
You got to sweep Creighton. You can't lose at home to Creighton 82-67.
Yeah, but I mean, I think the win at Creighton, I think the win at Georgetown. I think this is about where they belong. How much lower would you have had them?
I would have had them on the 11 line, so
really
2 lines lower. Yeah.
Spoken like a true Rutgers grad.
Chad, for a second there, I thought you were only a line wrong, but it turns out you're 2 lines wrong.
Let's talk about
this whole show is Chad being wrong. Everybody.
The 10 line. 2 more teams that were not near the field a couple weeks ago, both in here on the 10 line: Alabama and Wisconsin, along with Michigan and UConn. John, it was actually David. Let me start with you this time. Anything surprise you on this line?
Not particularly. UConn, I guess, with the win tonight, although we did this before, I wasn't as big on them, but I don't think it's too outrageous that they're here. I mean, when you look at what Alabama and Wisconsin have done in the last couple of weeks, I really just like how they're playing. The win at Maryland was huge. In Alabama, Ray Johnson will not be Coach of the Year, but he might be the Hoops HD Coach of the Year, which really is the more prestigious honor in my opinion.
I'll tell you something. I'm surprised Florida State isn't on this line because these are all football blue bloods. Which team does not belong on this 10 line?
That's true. That's true. UConn needs to come off.
For football purposes, yes. Well, John, is there somebody that has not shown up yet? We're 10 lines in, getting towards the very end of our at-large bids. In fact, our at-large bids will be finishing up on the next line here. Is there somebody in here that you have not seen yet that you really think does belong in here?
There is one team I had that would have been a little bit higher, and that's we have St. Joe's, so I'm going to say Butler here.
David, that's the one team that kind of stands out to me that has not made it in the field yet here up on the 10 line as well.
Yeah, I had Butler in. I'm trying to think who isn't in yet that I thought should be in. You asked 2 hard questions, Jen. I can't remember my seed list.
Let's go ahead and show the 11 line here, and this will include first 4 games. VCU in above the first 4. The first 4 games: Butler, Oregon State, Temple, and Florida State. Also, Wichita State making the field on the 11 line as well.
Are they in? I'm assuming they're the auto bid. Were they inside the first 4?
Wichita State in as the auto bid. They are sandwiched in. Temple was the 3rd of the first 4 teams. In between Temple and Florida State, there were actually 2 teams. Wichita State being one of them. The other one ended up on the 12 line, and then Florida State came in at number 47 overall. So we'll get to that one other team that would have actually been above the bubble, but isn't as an automatic bid, which if you guess Gonzaga, you'd be right about them.
I'm talking about another team in the Sun Belt that hasn't surfaced yet that really surprised me to not see them instead of Wichita.
Yep. Well, David, why don't we start with Wichita then? Because John, I know, does not like Wichita.
I had them inside the bubble. I think that, again, I think you have to give them some credit for blowing through the conference. I know they have 2 conference losses, but if they finish in first place by multiple games, and, I think you have to go ahead and put them inside the bubble. I like them. This is about where I had them. I believe I had them on this line. Couple teams that didn't get in. I had Akron and Chattanooga inside my bubble as well.
Well, Akron and Chattanooga will be in this field. They just did not make it inside the first 4.
Yeah.
John, Temple, Florida State, Butler, Oregon State, any of those teams that you feel do not belong that did make it in the first 4?
Yeah, I'm surprised that Temple is listed at large here below UConn, especially now in light of the fact that Temple is the overall leader in the American East of SMU.
let me clarify here for those people that are watching. The way that when we build these brackets, the way that we presume it is whoever is the highest rated team in the conference, regardless of current conference standings, is the presumed automatic bid winner. That's why UConn is in as the presumed auto bid winner from the American, despite being behind Temple in the standings.
I guess you weren't thrilled when I said on Monday that Temple's best win outside of the American was at Fairleigh Dickinson, huh?
I personally no. I had Temple up at 38 overall. There was a couple other people, especially David, that knocked Temple down.
Yes, because I am right, and your Temple is not 38. Again, an evening of Chad being wrong.
All right, well, let's take a look at the. I'm gonna in the bottom there. You see top 4 out. I'm gonna reveal that right now. Maybe. There it is. Cincinnati was the number 1 team to miss the field. Tulsa the number 2. Coincidentally, those 2 teams are playing right now as we record this.
In overtime.
In overtime.
So kind of a high
LSU and Washington, the other 2 teams, get some serious consideration but not make the field. Anybody there, David, now that you look at those top 4 teams that you would push in above the last few teams that made the field here?
I'm not as big on Oregon State. If Cincinnati pulls this off, I'd probably slide them in ahead of Oregon State. But other than that, I mean, you're starting to. When I look at the teams we didn't take, especially when you're looking at LSU and what, it's like, God, I hope that. It's unfortunate that they're as close as they are.
How about this VCU? We didn't really address VCU on the 11 line there. They're actually a team that I would have had out of this group. I would have had Cincinnati and VCU out. I don't really see it here with VCU at the moment, given that their best win was at St. Joe's and they really haven't beat anybody else that's in the field, and they have an awful loss at UMass, a horribly awful loss.
Yeah, I mean, that one was really bad. And again, you're looking at a lot of warts, but I'm not really seeing it. Cincinnati, I guess, like, I mean, they were the next team in line, I take it.
Yes.
I would have had them in. I would have had them in over Oregon State. I don't know if I would have had them all the way in ahead of VCU, but I would have swapped those 2. I'm not as big on Temple as clearly you are. But
I mean, the other team, John, we haven't really addressed this Florida State team, a team that is getting down fast here. They were fairly solidly in some prior brackets, and now they've lost 3 straight games, including Georgia Tech at home.
Yeah, losing to Georgia Tech is certainly something that the Surgeon General would not recommend.
I don't think. Again, this is what we think if the season ended today. I don't think Florida State will be there in the end based on how they've been playing. I mean,
they've got a tough schedule at Vod Tech, which they may not win even, but then at Duke, Notre Dame, and Syracuse, both at home. They may win one more game the rest of the regular season, and that's not going to be good enough.
No, it would not be. Not at all.
I also got to reveal under the also considered. These are the other teams that got votes for at-large spots, or at least voted into the first few teams out for some people. UCLA, George Washington, Clemson, Creighton, St. Bonaventure, Vanderbilt, and for John's sake only, St. Mary's. David, where did you rank St. Mary's?
I ranked 55 teams, and I ranked St. Mary's 90th, I believe.
And he really did. I have the ballot to prove it.
Yes.
John, I was going to turn back to John here and just ask you if there's anybody else in this group here that you like that you think still can make a push to the NCAA tournament as an at-large.
I would probably say Cincinnati for some of the reasons we had described earlier. Even though George Washington is not in the field right now, that's still a good win for the Bearcats to have in their pocket, and wins against VCU and UConn are still going to hold some weight.
How about off of this last group of other 7 teams, not the first 4 out, but these other considers? Anybody, David, that you think can make a push, or are these really just teams that we're barely mentioning?
Well, one of the teams that had you asked me that about 26 hours ago, I guess, I was really starting to like St. Bonaventure. And I'd seen them play a couple times, thought they were really good. And I was like, I was pretty much expecting them to wind up in my bracket today. And then they did something that you should never do, regardless of who you are, and that was lose to LaSalle. So it would need to be sort of a Herculean effort, but I think the Bonnies could get in there. Another team off of this list, I'm not big on UCLA at all. I don't understand. I mean, I know the top of their profile is good, but if Clemson can just win the winnable games, I think they could play their way in, because the other thing about Clemson is that they're going to have opportunities to improve their profile more so than some of the other teams will, I think.
I'll tell you the one thing that I see when looking at this is I am not offended by anybody that we left out, saying, "Wow, that team really belongs in," and I'm only seeing a few teams here that I even think could make a case, and probably just Cincinnati, Tulsa, LSU that can make a case, and I don't know that it's a very good case. So I not very offended by the bracket that we ended up putting together, and it's kind of rare at this point of the year that there's not more teams that I really think should be in the tournament. If
Yeah.
maybe, well, maybe I'm misremembering from prior years, but let's go ahead and reveal. I'm sorry. Go ahead, David.
Well, I was just going to say, and if you look at who's out, Cincinnati, Tulsa, LSU, I mean, these are teams that play in the non-under-the-radar conferences. They're going to get chances, some more than others, to improve their records. And the way the conference tournament works, like if you look at the Pac-12, the win in advance format means some of these bubble teams will win in advance, and suddenly their profiles will improve. So,
Right.
Again,
I'm also going to give a score update right here. Tulsa was up 3, but now Cincinnati has hit a pair of free throws, and Tulsa just turned the ball over on the ensuing play. So we may have a clusing on our hands here before the end of the show.
But let's go on, and what I want to do is reveal the rest of the bracket here. I'm going to start with the 12 line, and I know we've got a lot of viewers on and followers on our site here that are Dayton fans, and I know they're not going to be happy that I'm about to do this, but it is within the rules, and it's exactly what would have happened with the top team on the 12 line. So sorry, Dayton fans, but you're playing Gonzaga in Spokane. You better win a few more games to get off of this 5 line if this is possible to happen.
Yeah, this would.
It would not. There would be riots in the street in Dayton if it did happen. I'll put it that way.
But okay, it's within the rules. It is within the rules, and it's not only is it within the rules, it's actually within the guidelines.
It's
what
encouraged.
you're guided to do. But still, with this being our committee, can't we just switch them with San Diego State? Good grief.
I should also add that Texas wouldn't be very pleased to see Gonzaga in the sub-region either.
Yeah, couple teams here, Chad, like Chattanooga, Little Rock, both inside my bubble. I don't know where they were in terms of the teams that were the first 4 out and also considered if you were to throw them down there. How close to the bubble are they? And I know they're on the 12 line, but
okay.
how many spots away?
Let me read it off to you. Florida State was our last team in. Cincinnati was our first team out. The next team out next team after them would have been Little Rock.
Okay.
Then would have been Tulsa. Then next would have actually come Chattanooga. So Chattanooga, Little Rock, both up in there. San Diego State was right the first team below Washington, so they would have been 5th team, or they would have been right below our first 4 out as well. So all 3 of those teams right mixed in there with those top 4 teams out, according to our grouping. So
that's still a good consolation prize for Arkansas Little Rock if you want to throw back to their last NCAA tournament win against the Irish back in 1986.
Going to keep going here and reveal a couple more lines. I also want to throw something out here. The 6-11 games that I skipped over. Utah, Wichita State. That is a regular season rematch. For bracketing purposes, I needed to do it because we're dealing with the first 4, and they can only go to certain sites there. And I didn't think that Wichita State should be moved off of that line. I think they would do that regular season rematch.
Yeah.
So 13 line, we've got Akron going in there, Hawaii, UNC Wilmington, and Valparaiso.
Oh my God. There's some good teams.
It's a tough 13 lines. We talked about this on Under the Radar the other night. It's 13 lines looking pretty scary right now.
Akron, Kentucky would be must-see TV. I don't think Hawaii quite has it when they're away from home, but Wilmington, Iowa State. as much as I like Valpo, Duke's just playing too well right now. But you'd really want to sit and watch two of those games.
uh, Going on to the 14 line, we've got Maryland against Stony Brook, Oregon, South Dakota State, North Carolina gets Yale, and Miami gets UAB.
This is an interesting matchup right here because usually whenever I see Stony Brook and Providence, I try to move them away from there because I wonder if they're close enough to possibly put Maryland at a home court disadvantage there.
I don't really think so. I don't see how Stony Brook, who's out on Long Island, I guess as the eagle flies, it's not that far, but they're on Long Island. They got to kind of wrap around there, and I do not think that would be a home court disadvantage.
I
may
think
not put Stony Brook in
Yale out of
Brooklyn.
Providence would be a priority.
Yeah, and you don't want to do that to Maryland because Stony Brook's a hell of a lot better than Minnesota. So you don't want to make them have to play on the road against Stony Brook.
On the 15 seed line here, we got New Mexico State, Belmont, Stephen F. Austin, and Montana.
Man,
probably not much. I don't know if there's anyone here that really could pull an upset. Not from what I've seen so far this season.
No, probably not.
And we'll finish up with the 16 line. We got Hampton versus Bucknell taking on Kansas. Bucknell, Kansas. North Florida against Villanova. Asheville against Virginia, and Texas Southern Wagner taking on Oklahoma.
Yeah. Okay, so there you have it.
So on that note, John, let me start with you. Any final thoughts about our bracket here?
Yeah, we've already mentioned Notre Dame and Arkansas Little Rock as one throwback. There's another one in that little sub-region where Valpo goes back to the scene of the crime in Oklahoma City where they ran the pacer play against Mississippi. Could history repeat itself if they get shipped out to OKC?
David, any final thoughts from you?
Again, it's just some of the teams that I'm looking at. I think that Alabama and Wisconsin are playing really well and could even move up further than that and maybe even be wearing white. I like Texas. They'll certainly have their chances if they can get some more big wins. One of the things you're starting to look at is when you look at Dayton is probably the highest seeded team that's in this situation, but for sure when you look at Chattanooga and some of the teams on the 12 line, their paper really can't get any better. There's nobody that they're faced between now and the end that's better than they are that they could really overtake and move themselves up. So if you're in a situation where you have to stay the same or get worse, it's kind of hard to stay the same.
Well, I think my final thought is I just want to throw out there once again to all our Dayton fans out there that this is only a projected bracket. This is not the final bracket. So please, when you see that I matched up with Gonzaga and Spokane,
I would like to say to the Dayton fans that Chad Sherwood put this bracket together. I will have his contact information. It'll be right down there below us if you need to get in touch with him.
But on that note,
Chad, please.
For David Griggs, John Sleek, also for Lee Delvecchio and Warren Nolan, who did contribute to the bracket but could not join us today, I'm Chad Sherwood. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you again real soon.